Writing a book is a marathon sprint, or a sprint marathon, I'm not sure which. And I'll admit at this point, I was stuck. I could talk about the differences between the 4 relationship dynamics, but not necessarily in a way that was succinct. And then 2 things happened. I read Who's Got Your Back by Keith Ferrazzi, a great title, and I also had the opportunity to hear Brené Brown talk about courage and vulnerability. So how did that help me? It crystallized the 4 elements that for me make up the ally mindset. Let me tell you about each of them. So the 4 elements of an ally mindset are abundance and generosity, courage and vulnerability, candor and debate, and action and accountability. And for me, it's the and that makes all the difference. Let's start with abundance and generosity. If you look at success as a limited resource, then you're more likely to hoard information and work to keep this for yourself. For me, I approach life and business with an abundance mindset. There is more than enough success to go round for all and each of us. And I'm often asked, well, who are your major competitors? And to be honest, I don't pay attention, because I hope that they are as successful as my team and I are. And I want to be the best version of me that I can be versus a second-hand copy of whatever they may be doing. And that leads to the and generosity, because I've lost count of the number of business owners that you might describe as being competitors to me that I've sat down and coached and mentored and shared my story and experiences, all to help accelerate their individual success. So the first step in an ally mindset is abundance and generosity, which leads to the second one, courage and vulnerability. I'll admit, I'm British, you may have guessed that from the accent. I've had a wall of various thicknesses that protected me from my professional world. I didn't talk about family and life. They were very separate from my work persona. And courage and vulnerability is about being able to admit when we don't know, when we're uncertain, or perhaps when we're about to take risk. It's about being able to ask for help, and then more importantly, to take it. The turning point for me, I was working with a CFO in England. He was struggling with elements of his role and his team, but he was also struggling with elements of his home life. And after a few months of executive coaching, he turned to me and he said, "You know so much about me, yet I know so little about you." And I reflected on that moment, and whilst I can't admit that the wall has come down completely, I can certainly show that the door has started to open, and that by sharing my true thoughts has allowed others to become vested in my success. It has allowed me to build stronger relationships with those that I come in contact with. Courage and vulnerability go hand in hand and are the second element to an ally mindset. The third element, candor and debate. These are critical because it's about sharing your point of view, even when it's controversial, even when it might be at some personal risk. Goes back to courage and vulnerability. But it links the two, because for me it's not just about stating your point of view, throwing the grenade and then stepping back and watching the ensuing chaos. It is about then the debate, the active listening, the conversation that follows that results in increased learning. It's about discussing the undiscussables, the elephant in the room, the hot topics, but doing it in a way that allows an informed decision that moves the team forward. Candor and debate is the third part of an ally mindset. And then the final piece is action and accountability. And again, it's a two-way street. It takes two to tango, and I should know I'm a ballroom dancer. So accountability is about me living up to those commitments that I've made. Accountability is about, if I've chosen to be an ally to you, that I do that consistently 24/7, and not just on the good days, I do it in the tough moments too. And action is about walking the talk. It is about taking those deliberate decisions, behaviours, commitments that allow us to grow together and deliver a successful outcome. So there you have it, the 4 elements of an ally mindset: abundance and generosity, courage and vulnerability, candor and debate, action and accountability. A special thank you to Keith Ferrazzi, as I'm honoured that he wrote the foreword to my book, Cultivate, the Power of Winning Relationships.